До представлення наших спікерів, я так, напевно, буду представляти просто по черзі, перш за все.
I will start with introducing our speakers. First of all, I'd like to give them the opportunity to say a couple of words about themselves, to introduce themselves. The first national expert of EU4Skills expert coordinator, Mr. Gennady Rusanov. A couple of words about yourself.
Не знаю, що про мене додати.
Привітайте учасників.
Всіх вітаю, по-перше, дуже приємно бачити дуже багато знайомих облич.
Yes, welcome everybody. I'm really delighted to see many familiar faces. We have been working together for many years. It is very good that we are having a kind of sustainable process with many stakeholders and very passionate people who would like to change the VAT system of Ukraine for better. And welcome everybody. Hopefully we'll have a very good panel. Then I would like to introduce the Lilia Grabovsko from the National Training Center, the National Training Center. She can tell a lot of herself. So try first. Welcome, colleagues. The mics are very good. Everything is fine. With regard to the topic that we are going to discuss today, it is cooperation with the labor market. I would say that I have had a great experience in that systems. I do realize the necessity of synergy between the training institutions and the employer. It is exactly for employees that we are working from, that we train our students. And we also have the adult people who needs to be retrained, and it is the specialists of that institutions who know how to train them properly in line with the labor market needs. Actually, the VAT education is actually the great resource for the employers to get the highly qualified staff. Thank you, Lilia. Next person I'd like to introduce, and it's Valery Safronov, Deputy Head, Executive Director of the Zaporizhzhia Employers Federation, who was engaged in many activities, and he could share his experience of such cooperation. A couple of words from you. First of all, with regard to EU4Skills project, I'd say that it was a very good cooperation via SECWA, German institution, and we cooperated in the following way: cooperation of industrial enterprises with VAT through dual education and training. I would say that we have achieved very good results and outputs, and they are very positive. Also, like to say that in Zaporizhzhia, the level of cooperation between the employers and the Department of Education, and through them to the VAT education colleges and higher education institution, is very effective and efficient. We have signed the cooperation memorandum, and this ways of cooperation really helps us to train and retrain the staff. Thank you, Mr. Valery. You will share your experience and results with all these treasures that we have accumulated during the common activities. And before we start discussion, I'd like to say that we have several aspects of our discussions. Traditionally, we will be talking about education and also training, and adult training actually is long life training. Second, we have different education and training forms which are really specific for the labor market. It's not only formal education, but number of other forms they have been developing in recent time quite successfully, and some of them are even dominating. For example, in IT field, formal education is not the priority compared to other forms. But anyway, we are all living in Ukraine, and we are well aware of the dynamically changing situation, and it's changing dramatically. And the first thing I'd like to ask all our speakers today is to provide the assessment, evaluation of the situation, and to evaluate the capacities of the current med system, whether it is capable of responding to the challenges that our country and society is facing. Who could start, please? Mr. Gennady, over to you. Actually, I have quite a lot of ideas. I would like to streamline them briefly. So you mentioned the new changes, new challenges. Definitely we do have them, but they are actually, there are not many of them. We have been researching the labor market for quite many years, and we have cooperating with the systems for many years. We should understand that our war started not in 2022, but currently we are talking about the full-scale invasion of Ukraine. But actually the challenges that have already existed in the system, including demographic, economic challenges, the challenges caused by war, including increasing number of psychological and physical traumas, the people who had to lose, who lost their home and had to move. Actually, we did have those challenges before, but actually this full-scale invasion just multiplied the processes and speeded them up. So before, migration was kind of small springs, but now it is big rivers. So actually, the challenges just physically aggravated, increased. So they scaled up dramatically, unfortunately. Nevertheless, as the situation demonstrated, most of Ukrainian systems, including the vet system, proved to be resilient enough to stand these war challenges. And now it is the time for very quick and hopefully successful changes. Because if you look at different chains and components of Ukrainian education system, the vet education is mostly close to the reality. And of course, we would like to get the highest possible efficiency and effectiveness every time, at all times. But I can observe, I have been observing that system since 2005. I could say that the direction is really absolutely right. Of course, we appreciate the support of our partners. Sometimes some things depends on politicians, but the long-term trend is positive in my view. There are a couple of challenges that we should be treated seriously. The first one is the decrease in number of students in the system, and we have to identify the new target groups and focus on them. Thank you, dear colleagues. I think that you will definitely have questions while in the course of our discussion. There is my colleague who will collect the questions and we will reply them. Going back to the VET system, which includes the VET institutions and the national training centers under the national employment services. How could you assess the efficiency, effectiveness? Either it is 5 or 12, if it is 12-grade system. Well, 12 is too much. But may I not evaluate in grades? The state employment service is in the process of changing our format of cooperation with the employers. We started with the big employers who really require increase in their personnel, and they need new approaches. Our system, where education system, is flexible enough, and we respond to the challenges in the labor market. And I've already mentioned many times that the employer requires qualified workers, and they want them to be trained in a short time. That is why the period of retraining of adults is the priority for training centers. Currently, we're working with the people who would like to get vouchers. We've already discussed with Mr. Oleksiy this morning that actually many Ukrainians with higher education had lost their job in a special region, so they had to move to the region where their qualification is not in demand, and they are ready to be retrained, and they are ready to get working professional occupations. For me, it was kind of surprise, and we can see that many people with university education, they are ready to be retrained, but they are not ready to be trained for quite a long period, because any employer who would like to get a qualified worker, he would like to get him here today or tonight. But otherwise, he says, I don't know what way and where will my company be, either tomorrow or in a week or in half a year. So we have to change the retraining system respectfully. So introduce short-term courses. Thank you, Ms. Yuli. We have the input from our first expert, Mr. Himnadi. It was actually to focus on broader target groups because of demography reasons. We also have your idea of changing formats. And now we would like to hear from the employers. how they assess the possibilities of cooperation with the vet system. Maybe some negative and successful positive points. Thank you. First of all, I would like to say a couple of words about our cooperation with SECWA, if I may. Yes, yes, but yeah, I will be mm, short. So when this design organization entered the Zaporizhia region, we were not ready, and we cooperated with our vet institutions as we used to do that before. In February 22, the full-scale invasion started, and unfortunately, more than 75% of Zaporizhia region territories have been occupied. And because of huge outflow of young people from the southern part of the region and the eastern part of the region, they came, Zaporizhia hosted them, and we, together with our German colleagues, started short courses for retraining those young people, and with the financial support of our German partners. So we have retrained some occupations or electric specialists and crane operators. Also, another area, you may know that our teachers have to be retrained every 3 years. Because of COVID and the war, the retraining have been delayed, and we managed to retrain them with the support of our German partners. They just spent 550,000 Ukrainian hryvnias for the retraining activities. And now about the cooperation between the employers and vet schools. Honestly, today we are not going to assess in scores, but the flexibility is not sufficient enough. If, for example, I need three specialists of some specific occupation, but it is done mostly on working place. So I'd like to ask the participant of our panel. So we need to consider the changes in licensing conditions. Otherwise, we would not make any steps forward. It's been already for 30 years that we are just talking about changes in licensing system. So, but unfortunately, no steps forward. And a couple of words about qualification centers. It is a really very good job, and it's really very needed job. But being the former vet teacher and the current employee, I would say the following: if the vet institution, if it is licensed for a certain occupation, why this vet institution be reassessed and relicensed as a qualification center? So we have to change the system. Overall, I would say that we are, employers and vet institutions, we are interrelated, and we are cooperating and we will cooperate in the future. Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Valery. In terms of the future potential areas and how to build these bridges between different areas of interest, between the business which doesn't have education as its main focus, and the vet institutions which are focused on institutions. Quite often you see the situation when the companies have either no sufficient motivation or no resources, or if there is a need in a very small number of very narrow specialists, and the mass vet system cannot cope with these issues. And currently we are trying to develop informal and non-formal education and training, and we are trying to develop it and to provide access to wider groups of population to this new forms of education and training. That's why I'd like to ask Mr. Hennady. He was engaged in a number of researches. So which skills and occupations are in most demand, and what is the mismatch in terms of what employers need and what the labor market proposes? So there are a number of mismatches. If you don't go in specific occupations, because there are a great number of them, we can see more matches in technical aspects or technical occupation. For example, if we take, for example, a welder, the training of welders is more or less successful. We surveyed the employers and the former students, and the feedback was positive. There is no big mismatch here. Of course, there is a block of occupation in that occupation which should disappear, but it's another question.
А просто відсутність фактично такого навчання, це те, що умовно можна назвати м'які навички. Значна кількість роботодавців не то, що вимагає, але хотіла би бачити більше цих м'яких навичок, краще навчання цим навичкам. Ми говоримо про здатність комунікувати, тайм-менеджмент, знання іноземних мов, ну і так далі, і так далі. Це залежить від галузі, від професії, зрештою. У нас є багато даних, за цим я не буду знову ж таки вдаватися. А от тут, власне, є найбільше неспівпадіння. Тобто роботодавці хочуть цих навичок, вони хочуть, щоб токарі і зварювальники вміли не тільки зварювати чи обробляти метал, а й...
They want welders not only to be able to weld, but be able to communicate, to be on time, to work in a team, to know some foreign languages. And VET does not do that. So this component doesn't exist in curricula at all. And teachers very often are not able to teach that. They don't find it necessary. There are different reasons for that, but that's something which is really lacking. The same is with some entrepreneurial skills. These things are also absent. Our education is traditionally oriented at a person to start working for someone, like a plant, like a factory. A person just comes and works there. And no one thinks about self-employment of this person, or but just a possibility of opening a small enterprise, and that's a drawback, really. These are the main gaps that not really in our opinion, but this is the data that proves, and these are the general trends. So summing up, technical skills are okay depending on the profession, but on the average level, everything is okay. But the soft skills and the entrepreneurial skills, this is not okay. These things are absent. Thank you so much. I guess our educators would be able to respond to these comments. I would like to ask Valery, what is this gap? What that is lacking when we are talking from the position of the employers, or the skills that are provided by the that really coincide, match with the requirements, with the demand of the market, or there is really a need for the enhancement or improvement of soft skills and so on. I would like to answer in the following way. If we talk about dual education, it will smooth these issues and it can really solve this issue. But as for this dual education, there are different approaches. The approaches in Germany and here they are different. How they do the admission of students, a student, a company, a chamber of commerce, and also school. So our school is everything. So our school has to admit the students, has to distribute the students. But when these things are done, we have checked this information on dual education. All this communication and other skills are improved in the process of dual education acquiring. And we can say that these skills become better. And students get better soft skills if they are working, if they have this work-based learning. This is a model of dual education has certain specific traits, but I guess educators, unfortunately, we have limited possibilities to really characterize the experience of the Ministry of Education in the sphere of entrepreneurial skills acquiring. But I would like to ask Lilia about the presence of this element connected with soft skills as part of the curriculum and as these employment centers. Is it something which is required? Is it something which is in demand? Or maybe you see some other gaps if we talk about the trends of the labor market. And then we will try to create these bridges or possible models of communication. Really, State Employment Center has 11 vet schools, and only 8 of these centers are really working right now. As a result of hostilities, some of these schools, some of these centers cannot be used for education purposes. But what I can tell you about education programs that meet the needs of the enterprises, all our 8 schools, our 8 centers have this basic course on the organization of entrepreneurial activities, also business planning, and also generating business ideas. And they are really very popular, these courses, because there are some state programs that the Employment Center, together with the Ministry of Economy, they are implementing. They are giving micro grants to the citizens of Ukraine who really want to have these grants. They also help in business planning because there are some basic legal requirements as what you need to do to start your enterprise. And these courses are very popular, and people can even submit their applications online. We want to take a course in this or that topic. All the courses are available on the website of the State Employment Service. As for soft skills, I can tell you the following. Really, employers, we do have a lot of meetings with them, and employers now think that the most important thing for employers is that the person should be responsible. For employer, hard skills are not always necessary. Just this person should be eager to learn. Employers are ready to retrain people who are employed, but this person must be prepared, must be willing to be retrained. We have a lot of vulnerable groups of people, and we try to cover them in different aspects. But based on what the employers say, vulnerable groups of people are not always eager to be employed. They do not want to be retrained. They are not responsible enough to take care of their further employment. I think that the general situation is clear. And I guess the educators who are here today, you can also ask your questions or add your comment. We start receiving your questions. So I would like to encourage you, ask more questions. I would probably allow to answer this question, but you can ask any questions and we will try to process them. Tatiana will collect your questions. I have two questions. I have received two questions. I will read them so that you understand. You said that that trend is correct. What is the trend and what are its traits? The trend, the general trend, is better understanding of the situation, better comprehension. You know, that's a very general reply, but I will try to explain you. I have honor and experience of working with vets starting 2005, and if we consider, despite all the negative things about this trend, we see that the system is decentralized. That's an advantage. The decisions are made at the lower level, and that's where they must be made. Second, there is a better understanding of their disadvantages. The system understands where there are problems, where there are disadvantages, and generally the system understands how they can be improved or changed. In 2005, there was no understanding that the system should be changed. There was this idea that the Soviet vet system is the best, and there is no growth points. Right now, we have this understanding that changes are needed. There are also some steps to make certain changes. We can't say that everything right now, but recognizing that the problem exists, we have identified some problems in specific industries, in management, in funding, in teacher training, in internships. So we are identifying and narrowing these problems. We learn these problems, and we offer different mechanisms of solving these problems. Maybe not always these solutions or these mechanisms are successful because of subjective and objective reasons. It's not only the war, but there is this basic capacity of the system to cope with changes. there are some genetic problems, and this Soviet economy gave birth to these genetic problems. And for these problems to be solved, we need very large resources and political will, or we need more time, even though we don't have that much time. But we need to understand we work with a limited amount of institutions and people who were inherited from the Soviet system. And these people also need to be changed. They need some time to be changed. And we cannot really speed up the process. So the trend is correct, in my opinion. There are some existential issues that need to be changed. It's about attracting new people in this system. I don't not only mean vet schools, but this vet system in general. And a lot of things are done in this system. And we also need to change the structure of funding. There are some decisions, some solutions, they are being discussed. If they will be adopted, when they will be adopted, that's something we don't know yet. That's something we will see in future. And the second question, that's the Institute of Professional Qualification who is the author of this question. The second question, training soft skills is the task of vet system. My short reply is yes. Rodion wants to add something here. Unfortunately, we cannot hear because the speaker doesn't use the microphone. So this is something which should be done on the level of the family. I know what time management is, but maybe it's not the task of vet to learn soft skills, or maybe not only vet system should teach that. And the second thing, if really the education system is doing, then it should be standardized. Some teachers should be trained. And if we talk about the education system in general, this should be started in school and then continued in vet school and further in the university. That's an investment in the education system, in the human asset development. If it's a standard, should be a unified standard. And time management should be taught the same in Zhytomyr, in Cherkasy, or any other region of Ukraine. Gennady, please take your seat. Because our colleagues who follow you online, they can't see you. Shortly, I'll reflect on what Rodion said. Yes, I agree that that's a task for all the levels of education. And as for this standardization, I have a colleague, and we have this philosophical discussion with him about standards and these kind of things. Standards are a good thing, but I think but what we lack in our education system, I don't speak only about that system. Freedom is what our education system lacks. I don't remember who said that. I'm citing someone, in this medieval Italy, there were Borgias, there were a lot of rebels. Okay, shortly. In Switzerland, everything was very peaceful and calm in the medieval time. But so these Swiss people gave us some new things. So I guess freedom will bring us better results. Thank you for this live discussion. I know that employers take active part in this discussion because I want to ask this question to our participants. I would like to talk about this cooperation of enterprises and schools. We omit this three-party agreement. We used to say that that's a huge burden. And today, that we really need a three-party agreement. But people are afraid of it. And when students see that there is this message of three-party agreement between school, enterprise, they try to omit this question. But in the West, three-party agreements have a certain sense, and they are really efficient. If I, as an employer, invested time and money to train this carpenter, and then after the graduation, the student is not responsible because this carpenter is free now. Our employers are all of us employers are very grateful for vouchers. That's a good thing. But on behalf of Zaporizhia employers, 4515, but 3510 was really perfect. We are now talking about very specific things. Data codes of access. Thank you, colleagues. I would like to remind you that you can ask a question and really orient this discussion. We don't have that much time, but I would like to ask a question to each of you about our future. Like, how do we need to change, to recover, to rebuild, to reconstruct Ukraine? We have this great experience before 2014, then from 2014 to 2022, and COVID really didn't help us solve a lot of issues. It helped us with digitalization, but other things were missing. So you as experts, how would you propose, how would you offer our that system to change, to rebuild, to reconstruct our country? So I give you 3 seconds to think about your answer, to reflect on that question, though I understand that's a global question. So what I want to say, we discussed that today. The main thing is that it must become even more flexible than it has become within this last year. Second, in any case, really, there were a lot of surveys and polls, and I was present at all the focus groups with employers. Sometimes even I, from my level, I was surprised by employers, especially if you talk about farming and agriculture. Vet schools are not always equipped good enough to train experts the employer needs. We need to be more flexible in those approaches and forms of education. Yes, dual education, dual learning is able to adapt people to the working conditions, and also distant working, which allow us improve the learning capacities.
And also that the education and training system should not lose those stuff that have become the members of the team of that reforms. So, and retain those people within the system and improve the system. Because if we lose the human capital, we would not be able to improve the system itself. That's it. Yes, I do agree, Ms. Lilia, but I'd like to mention that if we consider the investment project design, I'm sure that the national budget would include at least 30% for the labor engaged in recovery of the country. And what is the response of the employers in addition to the appreciation of vouchers? Yes, it is the Ukrainian army that deoccupies and liberates the Ukrainian occupied territories, and all the territories are really destroyed, and we should be ready to recover this part of our country. And how we should do that? We should use the comprehensive and aggregated flexible approach and streamlined approach with regard to retraining and retraining of working occupations. So you think that the format would be generated by the practical implementation? Yes, but we should prepare, we should be ready for that. Yes, but we know that hard time generates strong projects. And I'd like to provide our national expert to summarize how recovery should be addressed using that. So the question is quite complicated. Actually, I think that system, in order to be capable to properly respond to the challenge, it needs several things. As mechanics say, the best detail in the mechanism is not in the mechanism, because it is never breaks. So we should analyze and streamline the well system. In addition to become, it should be not only more flexible, but also more swift in responding to the challenges. The second point, we shouldn't be scared of our own mistakes. Maybe it's banal, but the educators are afraid of mistakes even more than other people, because our system is very much focused on avoiding mistakes. Because from the early school, our children are trained to start at specific place on the line and to use the specific color of pen. But we should be more diverse, and also our system should become more human focused. We should address different groups, different customers, because we are all aware that dozens of years the focus population was 400,000 people, and later 200,000 people. So we can see the obvious trend. So it's just it doesn't mean that the number of people who would like to get these occupations decreased, that they just use different ways of getting education and training. So we should be more inventive in finding our customs. Unfortunately, we'll get many people with the psychological traumas or physically incapable. We should be able to find the approach to them. It is really a challenge. These things are quite philosophical, but they eventually result in practical approaches. If you understand the basic principles, it would be easier for you to find the practical approaches. Thank you. Thank you. If anybody has questions, you may ask them now. Just to summarize, the issue that we are currently discussing is very very much in line with the EU4Skills concept that we are currently finalizing. We were trying to develop different training formats, including in-service training, dual education, by engaging that institutions to flexible approaches to formal qualifications. We also focused on supporting that teachers and empower them and make them capable to work with the different target groups and in different environment. We have the primary VET education, and for which target group is mostly young people. And at the same time, the demand for VET qualifications increases. That's why VET education should offer the balanced education service portfolio. We will face a lot of challenges ahead. We will have a challenge of people who would get back to Ukraine, who currently are in other countries, in terms that people who got qualifications, sometimes very decent qualifications, during their stay abroad for this year or 2 years, we should create the environment for them that they could find themselves in the Ukrainian market, and how the VET education should respond to such people. I mean, the qualification centers and the employment service, how we should synchronize with the EU directive on recognizing occupational qualifications, because we do have synchronized educational standards. But what about the occupations? So we have a long list of issues to deal with ahead, but hard time created very good community, professional community, and our VET educators demonstrate really success and efficiency, because it's not only about training or education, but it's about working with people. And in the morning, at our discussion panel, we said that we are just in the beginning of a long way, a long journey, and I would like to welcome all of you to participate in the process. It is not about some employees or some VET institutions, as our employee member of panel said. We need not only tribal memorandums and agreements, but with many, sometimes 4, 5, or 6 households holders. So we are in time with the agenda. I'd like to add that you have created this very valuable capacity that would develop the
Що, я думаю, що можемо розпочинати, так, пані Тетяно? Да?
I think we could start.
Думаю, що можемо
Right.
розпочинати. Час
Okay, let's start.
хвилини.
So
Отже, доброго дня.
we are very short in time, so good afternoon. Welcome everybody who joined our session. My name is Natalia Saimolenko, and we start panel discussion for ensuring quality in vet education. During the next hour, we are going to talk about the context which generates the quality, ensures the quality of education, and also the instruments that could be used in ensuring quality. We have our honorable speakers with us, so let me introduce Svetlana Kravets, the head of Modern Occupation Institute of the National Academy of Pedagogical Science of Ukraine, Natalia Prosenko, project manager, Ministry of Education and Science, Natalia Overko, director of Interregional vet education, of art modeling and design, Lviv City, Irina Smirnova, Professional Education Center, Sumy region, Tetiana Sverstyuk, deputy principal of National Trade University, and Ms. Nikiforenko, deputy principal of that institution number 33, City, Kyiv. Before we start our discussion, let me remind you that at the end of our discussion, you will be able to ask questions to our speakers, both present here physically and those who joined our discussion online. So if you have any questions online, put them in the chat and we will try to answer all your questions related to our topic. So let's start. So with all the challenges, modern challenges that we face, that education system realizes that the priority is education and training of qualified worker. And also the economy, the business requires sufficient quality of staff. Ensuring quality is one of the issues that are currently very actually discussed. And many people ask, what is quality in this area? And we will try to find answers to these questions together with the speakers, but we will also be more practically focused, and we will try to identify the instruments that, in our view and in the view of our speakers, ensure the quality of professional education and training and how it could be achieved. Of course, this point was in the focus of the whole EU4Skills project implementation period. Ensuring quality is first of all depends on key three components: content, education and training, the teacher competences, pedagogical teaching methodology, and also the material base, the equipment for training. So content was always the focus of reforming that system. Talking about the quality, we mean standards, both educational standards and professional standards. And according to the Ministry of Education and Science, we have 151 national standards developed, and the National Qualification Agency says that there's already 277 occupational standards are available in Ukraine.
Світлани Кравець. Пані Світлана, ми, я принаймні знаю, да,
I
що
know that you have extensive experience in the development of educational and occupational standards. So, in your opinion, is educational standard which is based on the competencies a basic instrument that could provide for the quality of education? And what is the necessity in this kind of standards? And maybe what's the peculiarity? Or maybe on the other hand, what are the problems with these occupational standards? Thank you for your questions. I would like to greet participants of our section, and I would like to say that the question of education quality was very active from the very beginning of our conference. Of course, quality of education is a very relevant question because it characterizes our community in general. It characterizes the development of the community, and taking into account the challenges that our country is facing today, our community, our society needs to respond in these non-standard conditions. We need to train this labor force for the reconstruction of our country. And generally, quality is the improvement at the system level. We can't say that quality can be a system thing. That's a dynamic process that requires constant improving. And all the other conditions, cultural, economic, political, they influence this quality. We are using this competence-based approach in the development of occupational standards and also educational standards and curricula. This competence-based approach is recognized a basic approach in Europe, which could provide for the quality of education. All these aspects, technological aspects, digitalization, and we are quite successful in it because we use this competence-based approach rather for some time. And when we talk about these descriptors, the decomposition of competencies into knowledge and skills and competencies based on the European qualification framework, which is also good. That's a good basis for the development of quality and planning the education contents. The second thing, if you talk about the tools that would allow us to provide for quality, these are the questions to pedagogics and also our academia. We have some managerial, political, and economical issues and tools, and one of the tools which allows to unite economic and managerial aspect, that's an occupational standard, because occupational standard can allow us to plan the contents based on the requirements of the economy and the labor market. And so these standards have certain evolution, and we can see how professional occupational standards have evolved from the parts of occupation to these new standards. and we know how these new occupational standards look like. Educational standards have similar evolution. They were developed using certain methodology at certain period of time. Then the methodology was changed, and now educational standards need to meet only the occupational standard if it is available. Yeah, so yes, there are really advantages, and there are some problems also. This process need to be more integrated. There must be synergy. And if there is an occupational standard, then we need an educational standard right away. If there is an educational standard, we need to develop a curriculum right away. So if there is a request on behalf of the personality, all the standards need to be flexible and need to be changed to meet the requirements of the personality. Some further very specific recommendations about the standards, I will probably share my ideas in the end of our discussion. Okay, thank you. Mr. Konjersky at the previous session said that occupational standard and a curriculum and evaluation are the key components. By the standard, we mean the occupational standard, but right now we work within the system of educational standard. And as you have said, there is evolution, but moving ahead and moving according to the European standards, we understand that we need to work on curricula. And because curricula must be quality documents, because depends on these contents, and the result of our training will depend. And as part of this project, for a long time, we have worked on curricula, and that's what was told at our main panel. And now the floor goes to Natalia Prochenko. And I would like her to speak about the development of curricula, about their implementation in the VET system. That's the first issue. And I would also like her to talk about this curricula and say if they can promote the trend that we have in Ukraine. I mean, lifelong learning, please. Dear colleagues, it's a pleasure to join this professional community, and I would like to answer to the questions. We need to develop curricula because we have some standards. You remember that we didn't have educational standards, we only had occupational standards. All of us enjoyed, we worked in 5 regions, and we developed 20 qualifications, good or bad, need to be improved. Maybe they have certain drawbacks, but the process started. And we started the process of developing these programs, this curricula. When I was working on this issue, I analyzed a lot of books, academic literature. I was asking this question, what are we playing? We were playing some games all the time. We are coming with some new ideas. We need to be able to explain in very simple words what is the difference between the programs we had before and the curriculum we have now. I guess we lack some understanding. Educational program is a process when some qualification is assigned. For example, we have full secondary qualification, like junior, bachelor, and so on. What is the difference between curricula right now? They are oriented at the result. When we used to work with curricula, we were process-oriented. We need to start this vocational educational process. We were reading through this curricula. Sometimes the teacher of materials or electric equipment, they could agree with their colleagues or disagree, but that was a process. We are now result-oriented. These two main components are time and cost, time and money. Because of that, we need to optimize a lot of things. And these new curricula are result-oriented. And that is also the basic of this occupational standard. We didn't have some standards, and we decided to make an educational program based on some educational standard. I don't want to hurt anyone. You know, you need 1 year to develop, to approve, then to get a license, and then all these programs and curricula need to be approved. It requires time, and this can be done. But if we use this module approach, that's not a new thing. We've been working in the vet system for like dozens of years, and we know that this module approach was initiated back in 2000, and some other people tried to work on that, but the module has something completed. It's not a part of time. It's not first semester or second semester or a fragment of the first system. That's a block of this program, of this curriculum, that is also result-oriented, something that you can use at the labor market. And if we can build these modules, we will have a resource, because we would be able to develop micro qualifications. I see Mr. Yuri here. It's very well included in here. When there is a micro qualification, when there is some partial qualification, when there is full qualification. But what are the challenges? What challenges I have faced personally? We say that curricula have to be flexible, but if you talk about northern region of Sumy or southern region of Mykolaiv, the curricula will be different when we need to train some cooks. It's cold there, it's warm here, there is a lot of fish, there is a lot of meat here. So when developing this curriculum, we need and can take it into account, but it requires time. We need to teach people how to make this kind of programs and curricula, but they will be able to do that. They will start doing it when they understand that they need a client. If they have a nice curricula and which is in high demand, and clients will want to study using this curricula, and we need to somehow stabilize these results. We say that a person exited the program, and in the West they say that exited early, preliminary exit. We want that students who have exited this training program, we want them to be useful in the labor market. That is why we need to think about this qualification. It could be full qualification or partial qualification. So if we talk about curricula, I'm finalizing the construct of curricula in Excel. I want each piece of paper to have some guidelines. So I guess we will continue a series of webinars. And as for this short curricula, that's the result of longer curricula. Natalia, you state that these kind of programs cannot really provide for flexibility of this vet trajectory. We need to orient either at some job or some technology or some specific production conditions like certain equipment. It is possible to develop this kind of curricula, and maybe my construct will be able to help you. Okay, thank you. And to continue our cooperation, and in this context, I would like to ask if the practical case of your institution, Natalia, can it prove that this trend is working? I'd say that Lviv is a pioneer in developing and implementing these short-term courses that allow workers to enter the labor market sooner. We were the first to train the most amount of students in these short-term courses. What was good and was bad. Hello, colleagues. Thank you for this invitation, and thank you for this opportunity to share my experience. Last year was very significant for us because our institution, in our institution, we have a lot of retraining courses for adult population. But in March last year, there was an idea, and we have implemented with this training center with the support of the UN. The idea was to present some short-term courses for IDPs, and the mission of these courses, of this training, was to re-socialize of women in the first place. I'm sorry about this gender inequality, because we had a lot of females who came and they lived in the dormitories of our schools, and so we wanted to engage them in this short-term training. What were the challenges? The emotional adaptation was a difficult thing, because when we offered this idea, they didn't quite understand why they needed. And the first students were 8 women, and later, within these few months, from March to August, we have trained 88 women. They took our short-term courses. We developed a curriculum, and 76, 72 weeks, within 3 weeks, with the acquisition of some partial qualifications. Thank you. This kind of training is supported with certain learning materials, with the evaluation materials, so that we could evaluate and later let these workers enter the labor market. As far as I know, you managed to employ all of these women. Yes, employers were our beneficiaries. They helped us, and they were active in developing this curriculum. And with their initiative, the competencies were defined, which were needed to be acquired, so that our students could adapt to the working conditions at these enterprises. I guess this is one of the criteria of quality of our services, and also this quality also depends on the conditions that are created in vet schools and vet institutions. And today, taking into account the challenges that we have, I mean, the pandemic and the war, The training process includes both online technology and also some offline technology and some hybrid training. And I guess this digitalization is very deep in our education process, and we only need to move forward. And we need to train that, because quality also depends on the professional level of our teachers. And within the implementation of this project, we focused a lot of time on that. And how this digital technology was introduced, how they trained the vet schools, how we work with this technology. That's the question I want to address to Irina Smirnova. Please, the floor is yours. What can you tell about that?
Трошки хочу поділитися досвідом з нашої Сумської області. Взагалі, якщо говорити про забезпечення якості підготовки у системи професійної освіти шляхом впровадження цифрових технологій, шляхом формування у педагогів готовності до їх використання, то ми це зрозуміли ще у 2016 році, коли в нашій області ми створили школу розвитку IT-компетентності. Ось саме тоді ми, власне, почали роботу з формування у педагогів.
Started developing our skills with our teachers, I mean IT skills. At the inception, our IT school was mostly focused on vet school teachers, and eventually it became very popular among the other teachers, both the general schools, secondary schools, pre-high and high education schools, not only in our region. We started from providing teaching in IT skills in offline sessions. We didn't think about online sessions. So we developed e-tests. We teach them how to make presentations, how to use interactive desks, and we also developed the electronic materials that facilitated testing the skills and knowledge with the students. When in 2022, the situation changed. First pandemic, and then military Russian aggression. And in our region, there were active hostilities both in our regions and neighboring regions, and the educational institutions were forced to implement the remote teaching and online methodologies, and these the approaches have become more popular among the teachers. At that time, we started actually developing side scope of IT competencies development and teaching environment. Before we used Google Classes, and now we are using Moodle as well. Our competence development school has developed its brand style, and we use it also in advertising materials. We have developed the logo of IT competence schools. We promote the possibilities of
соцмережах, на нашому сайті.
studying
Ну,
at
власне,
in
все це
our it was in
призводить до
our
того, що
school via
багато
different
школи
websites.
проходять педагогічні
So
працівники
and
з різних областей.
eventually we have
Вибачте, будь ласка,
the teachers from
скажіть, будь
different
ласка, взагалі
regions.
проблеми
So
на сьогоднішній день вони
tell me
є
please, do you face
впровадженню
any challenges, any problems with implementation of digital technologies, teaching
Ну,
technologies?
насправді ми
Do you face them?
ну, якби ми
Actually,
стикаємося з
we
проблемою впровадження
face the
закладів
challenges
освіти.
of
Ми допомагаємо
implementing these
до нас
technologies,
звертаються
IT
з цими
technologies,
проблемами. Так, наприклад, в одному з закладів
with
освіти в нашій області є
educational
проблеми
institutions
з
because we
дистанційним навчанням.
provide them
Вони до нас
our support.
звернулися. Ми
So, for
допомогли
example, one
сформувати
that
систему
schools
Workspace for
had
Education в закладі освіти, яка
had
дозволяє
some
здійснювати
challenge,
моніторинг
and we
систему електронних
helped
класів,
them to
зрештою
deploy
спроектувати
the
для педагогічних
Google
працівників
Education Workspace and also
повне
train
використання
their
цих
teachers on
платформ.
how to use
Також
the
у нас,
IT
звісно, якщо
online
говорити
classes
про роботу школи, то
sessions.
проблема є в
Talking
тому,
about
щоб
this
шукати
school,
натхнення, шукати нові
is
ресурси, як
it's not the problem is not the
Ну,
inspiration or
важливо нам
searching for new resources
знати,
and how they should be
участь
used.
у міжнародних
Used.
програмах, у
Because
міжнародних
we are actively engaged in international
Наприклад,
programs,
ми
international
були учасниками багатьох
projects.
курсів,
For example,
але
EU4Skills, we
нас
participated in many training
зрозуміли, як впроваджувати
courses,
дистанційні технології
and we
системно.
understood
Якщо
how
говорити про
IT
досвід області, то
teaching
це
technologies should be implemented systematically. When it was everything was started back in 2020, each teacher used the instruments he or she knew how to use them. Currently, we have access to special spaces like Google Workspace, Office 360, Moodle. Our education institutions have deployed them with the support of Training Methodological Center, and they actively use them. I would like to emphasize that it contributes a lot to the improving of quality of education. You want to add something? Yes, I'd like to say that Ms. Irina was super active at the training provided by a representative of Fiji. When he saw, he actually shared his experience how they in their company they implement training instruments, and when he saw which platforms and which resources our teachers, our trainers use, he was really astonished. I wanted to ask, Ms. Irina, you are acquainted with many platforms where digital resources can be successfully used. Tell me, please, which platform is most accessible for our schools, and how long does it take to learn how to use the platform? Which one is the most, let's say, the simplest one to learn how to work with it? Talking about the remote teaching system, I would say this Google Workspace. Because most of our teachers have their private Gmail account, and in case of shifting to other platform, it wouldn't be very much painful. In terms of the time, it mostly depends on time of deployment of this system with the training educational institutions. So on average, it's about 1 month or at least 2 weeks. Okay, yes, thank you very much. It is also about the quality of education. And one of the indicators or the results of quality is
саме от
effect
компонент,
testing.
один із компонентів
And one of the
EU4Skills.
components
І
of
на цьому дуже
EU4Skills
приділяли
project
велику увагу. Було
was
проведено
focused
5
on,
навчань,
on
в
testing.
яких взяли участь наші
We have
педагогічні
provided
працівники.
a series
І,
of training
мабуть, процес оцінювання, він
with
є
our Ukrainian teachers
важким
participated
і
in
складним не
them.
лише для здобувача освіти, да,
Actually,
але в
training
першу чергу для педагогічного працівника.
is
То,
quite a challenge
будь
not
ласка,
only for a student,
моє
but
запитання
also for a
до
teacher.
пані
So
Тетяни.
my question
Прошу
is to Ms. Tatiana.
поділитися своїм
Please
досвідом
share your
участі
experience
саме в таких
of
проєктах,
participating in
і
such
що
type
це
of
дало, і
projects,
як це
and
впливає, саме оці от інструменти
what was the
оцінювання
outcome?
впливають на
What did you
ефективність
take
цієї
from
діяльності.
those trainings, and how these results impacted the quality of trainings? Good afternoon. Due to EU4Skills, I was engaged in training in December on testing knowledge based on competences. The training got together about 40 colleagues, where we learned how the competence-based testing should be arranged. We also familiarized with the testing instruments, and we tried to use them in practice. The training was really a challenge because it was in December, and we had blackouts at that time, but anyway, we had to do our homework. So we had quite a lot of sessions, and our instruments were considered in a very detailed way. And despite the fact that all the trainees were experienced teachers, each of us got a lot of comments and remarks. So we do realize that the evaluation has several stages. We mentioned qualification centers and improvement on qualification, and we have to develop the testing and evaluation system to identify the level of knowledge and skills of the person who would be qualified. During the training, we developed the theoretical tests, and also we developed assessment for practical assignment. For theoretical tests, it was not very much difficult, although we used simplified Bloom taxonomy, which included 3 levels, C1, C2, and C3, for evaluating practical skills. Simpson taxonomy was used, which included 3 levels, P1, P2, and P3. I'm sorry for interrupting you because we are very limited in time, but could you tell us how these instruments can impact the quality of training? I believe that the employers should be engaged in developing such testing instruments, because talking about practical examinations, practical science should be developed in a way that would prove that his skills and qualifications are satisfactory for the employers. That's why the employers should be engaged in developing the instruments, testing instruments. Thank you very much. And now we are very close to the qualification centers. And we realize that more and more Ukrainians have to shift to formal, non-formal, and informal education and qualification centers so that emerging in the quite at high pace. Already 20 such qualification centers have been established as of today. And today we are having one of the vet educations where such qualifications center was established is Kyiv College number 33. So I would invite Ms. Valentina to share their experience in not establishing this center, but the effective operation of the center. Good afternoon, dear colleagues. First of all, would like to say that our training education institution is engaged in training cooks for 30 years. So I think it wasn't a challenge for us to establish a qualification center to be accredited with the National Accreditation Center for two occupations. In December 2022, our vet school was qualified as qualification center, and we entered in the register. So our competencies include test examination, testing for all people who have got to their qualification is in non-formal and informal format. Such people can address us to prove their qualification and get an official document, which would help them to develop their career, and they also increase their self-confidence. They will get the official document recognized by the state. Since 2022 till today, overall 356 persons got their qualifications. Just last week, 2 persons proved their qualifications and got certificates. Our target group are people age 30, over 30. So it's about people who started to the education when they were teenagers, but at some time they had to go to work. So our mission is to help them to prove their qualification, and it is what our business requires as well, because many people went abroad because of war, and they do need qualified staff. So thank you. So unfortunately, the times runs quickly, and we promised the Q&A session, and yes, we do have a couple of questions from our audience. And I would like to ask one question, which is any one of you could reply.
забезпечення
Because
якості освіти, воно також залежить і від оцієї
ensuring
синергії, яка
quality
між
of education depends on
співпраці з
synergy
роботодавцями закладу
and
освіти і роботодавцями.
cooperation
Тож
between the
розробка професійних
education
стандартів,
institutions and
розробка освітніх
employers.
стандартів і освітніх
So
програм,
development of occupational
спільна
standards
робота,
and
це
teaching
той
and
саме
learning
зміст, який буде
training
закладений, він і буде визначати,
standards
може визначити
and
саме ту якість і підготовленого робітника безпосередньо, який
would
необхідний саме для нашого
is
працедавця.
the
Тож
basis
це
would be the
питання,
basis for
що
training
може стати
the qualified
мотиватором
specialists.
для
The question is,
громадськості
what would
освітян
motivate
для розроблення і
the
модернізації
business, the society, and the schools to upgrade the content of education and training?
Мотиватором для бізнесу, громадськості, освітян для розроблення стандартів і оновлення змісту освіти. Шановні колеги, це питання таке водночас і просте, і зрозуміле вже, напевно, в контексті сьогоднішнього заходу, але має ще таке глобальне
This question is understandable, but has this very important basis. In the previous session, we have discussed about soft skills, and one of them is the responsibility of our students. We talked about their responsibility when it comes to labor functions. Motivation is something inner, and each citizen of Ukraine I guess we have very obvious motivators. These are crisis motivators indeed. Each responsible citizen also must be responsible to solve different issues. And if we talk about the development of economy in the war and post-war period, we should remember that each of us should have inner motivation to some activity and also to update of our occupational standard and also updating of our curricula. If we talk about outer motivators, I would focus on these three tasks. We are very grateful to those people who provide donor support to our country. These are international projects who have this very clear and program and tasks, and they allow us to solve these tasks within a certain project. So I guess creating, developing occupational standards, educational standards, and curricula, that's a good start and a good result. So there is this cycle of a lot of documents starting with the occupational standard, educational standard, qualification center, and approval of qualification. We can discuss that issue later. So international projects serve as a good basis for narrowing down the regional projects. Project activity can be organized in regions. This kind of project activities with the standard development should have a team, a working group, and these people could work on both occupational and educational standard. Also some financial motivator, and that has a big impact on each person because any kind of work needs to be paid for, and that would depend on the employer and also on the management of each particular school, and it will certainly bring some good results. And when we motivate the person to some activity, we can be sure that this person will be also prepared for some other activities. That's also some kind of investments in the human assets, because sometimes our people work without this financial motivation. And then there's also self-motivation. We we need to go into the outer world. That's the promotion of education, promotion of available products. That's a timely response to some occupational standard. When an occupational standard is discussed, goes through some hearings, when it's discussed, there can be a working group that would be working on the educational standard or a curricula, and those people who develop occupational standards should be involved in the development of other documents. And then each person will be responsible and motivated to reconstruct our country. So I'm listening here, and to be a motivator for our teachers, and the person who developed occupational standard and or some educational standard, and let's say they are assigned some academic rank like a PhD. When you need to develop a standard, you need to learn so many resources and papers and literature. That's like an individual product, a copyright. Yes, that's something we need to change. Okay, thank you. Are there any other thoughts on that? Maybe there are some other questions to our speakers. Maybe some remarks. Okay, thank you so much. Unfortunately, so fortunately, there are some people, it's not unfortunately, it's fortunately, people online are listening to us. Unfortunately, we don't have any other questions. So today, within this very short meeting, we managed to analyze some achievements in the context of quality provision, and also within the context of our project EU4Skills, and we emphasized on the components which could really provide for the quality of vocational education and training. So, dear friends, thank you for your active participation. We are moving forward. We are moving ahead to our victory. All the best to you. And I would like to remind you that we will still have this final word in the lobby. We will have some unofficial communication. So see you later. Goodbye.